What if your depression isn't an illness, but a message? What if the heaviness you carry isn't a malfunction of the brain, but the soul refusing to live a life that no longer reflects who you truly are? What if nothing is wrong with you, except the fact that you've abandoned your own path? Most people are taught to see depression as a purely biochemical event, a faulty brain, a chemical imbalance, a medical condition to suppress, silence, or medicate away. But Carl Gustav Jung, one of the deepest psychological thinkers of the 20th century, proposed something far more unsettling and far more liberating. He believed that what we often call depression is not the collapse of the organism, but the protest of the unconscious, a signal that the life you are living, the identity you're wearing, the roles you're performing, the expectations you're meeting has drifted too far from the truth of who you are. Jung called this the neurosis of meaninglessness, a crisis that doesn't come from weakness, but from disconnection. A dark night of the psyche where the unconscious refuses to keep supporting a life built on a false foundation. And this is the frame we begin with. You're not broken. You're disconnected from your purpose. Your soul isn't failing, it's fighting. It's trying to wake you. It's trying to pull you away from the wrong story and redirect you back to the path you were meant to walk. In this video, we're going to go far beneath the surface, beyond psychology as you know it, beyond self-help cliches, beyond labels that reduce your inner world to chemistry. We're going to explore Jung's radical idea that depression is a symbolic message from the deepest layers of the mind. A message that you have outgrown the life you're living. A message that your personal myth, the unique narrative your soul came here to fulfill, has been ignored for too long. If you've ever felt empty in a life that looks fine, if you've ever felt lost even when everything seems in order, if you've ever wondered why you feel disconnected from yourself, stay with this video, because what you're going through might not be a breakdown, it might be the beginning of your awakening, a psychological rebirth, a return to meaning, to authenticity, to the path that is truly yours. Let's begin. Number 1. The real root of depression according to Jung. Modern society has trained people to see depression as nothing more than a chemical malfunction, an error in the brain that needs to be corrected, medicated, or suppressed. And while biology plays its part, this explanation is painfully incomplete. It strips away the depth of the human experience and ignores the truth that the mind, the body, and the soul are not separate systems. They speak to each other, they react to each other. And sometimes, what looks like symptoms are actually signals. Signals that something inside you is no longer aligned with the life you're living. This is where Jung's perspective cuts through the noise. He saw depression not as the end, but as a beginning, a protest from the unconscious. When a man drifts too far from his truth, when he abandons what makes him feel alive, when he silences his instincts and buries his desires just to fit into a mold, the psyche eventually refuses to play along. The soul stops cooperating. It withdraws its energy, its hunger, its drive, and what remains feels like emptiness. But it's really a form of rebellion, a refusal to keep living a life that isn't yours. Jung believed every individual carries what he called a personal myth, a unique life story that only they can live. It's the inner blueprint, the path that makes sense to your spirit even when it doesn't make sense to the world. And most people never discover it because they spend their lives following someone else's script. The expectations of parents, the demands of society, the pressure to be successful, even if success has nothing to do with purpose. You can build the perfect career, the perfect family, the perfect lifestyle, and still feel hollow because none of it belongs to you. This is the crisis Jung warned about. The tragedy of living a life that looks right but feels wrong. The quiet death that happens when your outer world thrives while your inner world starves. You can succeed in a life that is not yours and still feel dead inside. And that death, psychological, emotional, spiritual, is what many experience as depression. It's not the collapse of your capabilities. It's the collapse of the false self. The collapse of the mask you've been wearing for too long. When the false identity breaks, when the life you built no longer matches the truth inside you, the entire system shuts down. Not because you're weak, not because you're defective, but because something deeper is trying to pull you back to the path you were meant to walk. Depression becomes the signal, the interruption. The wake-up call. And the moment you begin to see it this way, everything starts to shift. Number 2. The mask that is killing you. The persona. Jung understood something most people never question. Almost everything you present to the world isn't actually you. It's a mask, a crafted identity, a polished version of yourself built to survive, to be accepted, to fit into the expectations around you. He called this mask the persona, and from childhood, society trains you to strengthen it. You're rewarded for being agreeable, polite, responsible, predictable. You're conditioned to adapt, not to discover who you really are. Little by little, the authentic self gets pushed into the background, while the persona becomes the face you show to the world. The problem is this mask doesn't grow from your truth. It grows from your fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of disappointing the people who raised you or the culture that shaped you. So, you become what others needed, not who you truly are. And for a while, it works. You get praise, you get stability, you get approval. But you lose something far more important, your inner fire. That quiet sense of rightness that comes from living in alignment with your real desires, values, and purpose. Living through the persona eventually creates an emotional drought. On the surface, everything looks fine. The job, the relationships, the routine. But inside, something starts to dry up. Motivation slips. Passion fades. Life becomes mechanical. You wake up, perform, and check the boxes, but there's no pulse behind any of it. The world sees functionality, but internally, you feel like a ghost. This is the emptiness Jung warned about, a slow, silent despair that creeps in when you've drifted too far from who you really are. Then comes the moment the persona begins to crack. It doesn't explode, it dissolves. You start to feel a strange friction within yourself. A sense that the life you're living doesn't match the man you know you could be. You catch yourself thinking, why does everything feel meaningless? You look at your achievements and feel nothing. You look at your future and feel nothing. Nothing is wrong on the outside, but everything is missing on the inside. And that's the sign, the beginning of an inner rebellion you can no longer ignore. The mask that once protected you is now suffocating you. And the soul, tired of pretending, begins to push back. Number 3, sings you're living someone else's life. There are signals your unconscious sends long before everything collapses. They're subtle, easy to dismiss, and almost always ignored because they don't look dramatic enough to be taken seriously. But Jung understood that the psyche rarely shouts, it whispers. And when you're living a life that isn't yours, those whispers turn into a silent rebellion, one that shows up in ways modern society mistakes for normal stress. The first sign is a kind of exhaustion no amount of sleep can fix. You wake up tired, move through your day tired, and go to bed tired. It's not physical fatigue, it's the fatigue of carrying a life that doesn't belong to you. Your energy isn't drained by effort, it's drained by misalignment. When you're disconnected from what gives your soul meaning, your body feels it long before your mind admits it. Another sign is the loss of passion for the things you used to love. Activities, hobbies, even people that once lit you up suddenly feel dull, not because you've outgrown them, but because you are missing from your own life. The flame didn't die, you stepped away from it. This is why nothing feels exciting anymore. Your authentic self isn't showing up to the experience. Then there's that strange feeling of being misplaced. Like you're living inside someone else's story. You look around at your life, your job, your relationships, your choices, and something feels off. It's subtle, but undeniable. You can't point to a single problem, yet your spirit feels out of position, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong space. The unconscious also speaks through dreams. Repetitive dreams, symbolic nightmares, being chased, being trapped, losing your voice. These aren't random. They're coded messages trying to wake you up. Jung believed dreams are the psyche's attempt to correct the imbalance created in waking life. When you ignore your truth during the day, your unconscious tries to remind you at night. There's also the heavy boredom that doesn't go away. Not the boredom of having nothing to do, but the boredom of having everything to do, and none of it matters. It's a spiritual numbness, as if life has lost its flavor. This is one of the clearest signs of living off purpose. The soul withdraws its enthusiasm when you deny its direction. And finally, there's the sensation of acting. Moving through your routines like you're performing a role instead of living a life. Smiling when you feel nothing. Agreeing when you disagree. Showing up physically but being absent internally. This is the persona taking over, while the true self retreats deeper and deeper inside. Jung believed these symptoms are not malfunctions, they're messages. The unconscious is trying to pull you back to yourself, back to your path, back to the life that resonates with who you really are. When the soul rebels, it doesn't destroy you. It tries to redirect you. It tries to wake you up, and it will keep trying until you finally listen. Number 4, the call to individuation. There comes a moment when the unconscious stops whispering and starts pushing, when the discomfort you've been ignoring becomes impossible to brush aside. When the life you've built, no matter how stable, respectable, or successful, starts to feel like a cage. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the central process of his entire psychology. And it isn't about becoming different or special. It isn't about ego, rebellion, or isolation. Individuation is about integration, bringing together the parts of yourself you've denied, silenced, or abandoned so you can finally live as a whole human being. This process begins when the persona, the mask, can no longer carry your life for you. You feel an inner pressure rising, a tension between the life you show the world and the truth you feel within. The more you try to force yourself into the old patterns, the more painful it becomes. This is the soul's rebellion. It's the moment when your inner world demands honesty, and that pressure is not a malfunction. It's a sign you've reached a turning point. Crisis often marks the doorway. The career that once made sense suddenly feels empty. Relationships you tolerated begin to feel suffocating. The routines that once kept you grounded now keep you stuck. In these moments, it's easy to believe you're falling apart. But Jung would say the opposite. You're finally waking up. You're being pushed out of the life that isn't yours so you can make room for the one that is. And this is the paradox. The moment you feel most lost is the moment you are closest to who you truly are. Because feeling lost means the old structures have collapsed. The old identity is dissolving. The false self is dying. And beneath all of that, the real self is starting to emerge. Confusion is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of transition. This is why individuation is the antidote to purposelessness. It doesn't give you meaning from the outside, it draws meaning from the inside. It reconnects you to the instincts you forgot, the voice you ignored, the life you were meant to live before the world told you who to be. Individuation doesn't promise comfort, it promises truth. And once you begin to follow that truth, even the pain starts to make sense. Because now, it's not meaningless suffering. It's the fire that forges you into who you were meant to become. Number 5, how to listen to the unconscious. Listening to the unconscious isn't about sitting in silence, waiting for some mystical voice to speak. It's about paying attention to the signals you've been trained to ignore. Jung believed the unconscious is always communicating, always guiding, always trying to pull you back toward your purpose. The problem is that most people are too busy, too distracted, or too conditioned to notice. But once you begin to watch closely, you realize the map you've been searching for has been inside you the entire time. Dreams are one of the clearest ways the unconscious speaks. They're not random images or meaningless noise. They're messages symbolic, emotional, layered with truth. When you see yourself being chased, trapped, falling, or searching for something you can't find, these aren't accidents. They're reflections of the battles happening inside you. Jung believed that dreams compensate for the imbalance of your waking life. If you ignore your inner truth during the day, your unconscious will bring it back to you at night, wrapped in imagery you can't escape. But the unconscious doesn't only speak in dreams. It speaks through creative impulses, those moments you feel a pull towards something for no logical reason. Maybe you suddenly feel the urge to write, paint, build, learn, travel, or start something new. These impulses aren't random whims. They're symbolic clues. They're the deeper self trying to break through the surface and remind you of who you are underneath the roles you perform. Then there are the recurring desires that never die, the things you keep coming back to year after year. even if you've buried them under responsibilities. These aren't hobbies, they're signals. They're the core parts of yourself that refuse to disappear. And closely tied to them are the talents you abandoned in childhood, the things you naturally gravitated toward before the world told you to be realistic. Childhood passions often carry the purest form of truth because they weren't shaped by fear or social pressure. Sometimes the unconscious speaks through sudden urges to change direction, a quiet nudge telling you a certain path no longer fits. It might feel like restlessness, dissatisfaction, or a desire to break your own routine. These urges are not instability. They're alignments. They're the self pulling you away from what no longer matches your nature. To tap into these signals, Jung encouraged asking powerful, uncomfortable questions. Questions that cut through the persona and expose what's been buried. What in me is trying to be born? Which parts of me died to please others? What suffering would I endure because it matters? These questions aren't meant to be answered quickly. They're meant to open a door. They pull your awareness inward, into the depths where your truth has been waiting. This is the turning point, the moment you stop living by reaction and start living by intention. Because once you begin to listen to these inner signals, the path ahead doesn't just appear, it calls you forward. Number 6. The descent into darkness. Psychological rebirth. At some point on this inner journey, you reach a depth that feels like darkness. Not the kind you escape with distractions, but the kind you have to move through with your eyes open. This stage has been described in myths for thousands of years. Orpheus descending into the underworld, Inanna passing through the gates of the shadow realm, the hero leaving the surface world and entering the depths where nothing familiar survives. Jung understood these stories weren't fantasy. They were psychological maps. They describe what happens when the old identity collapses and the real self begins to emerge. This descent is often experienced as depression, but not the kind society talks about. This isn't the collapse of who you are. It's the collapse of who you pretended to be. The false identity, the persona, the role, the mask breaks apart, and what's left is raw, exposed, and uncomfortable. Everything that once defined you feels distant. The habits, the ambitions, the life plan, they all start to fall away. And while this feels like falling, it's actually the first step toward rebirth. You're not being destroyed. You're being stripped of anything that isn't authentic. Jung called the transformation that happens here the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that turns suffering into meaning. It's the process where your conscious mind and your unconscious finally meet, finally speak, finally cooperate. The tension, the confusion, the sadness, all of it becomes fuel for a new way of being. Pain becomes information, emptiness becomes clarity, darkness becomes a doorway. This is not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough in disguise. And there's a difference, an important one, between sinking and diving. Sinking is passive. You're swallowed. You feel helpless, trapped, drowning in your own mind. Diving is intentional. You enter the depths with awareness. You face the truth instead of running from it. Both experiences feel dark, but only one leads to rebirth. The other keeps you stuck. The moment you stop fighting the descent and start understanding it, everything changes. You shift from being a victim of your pain to a student of it. This is why the ancient wisdom still holds. You must die before you are reborn. Not a physical death, but the death of the false you. The version built on fear, on expectations, on obligation. That old structure has to crumble for something stronger and more honest to take its place. So, when everything feels like it's falling apart, remember this. Your pain is not the end, it is initiation. It's the threshold. It's the moment your old life ends and your true life begins, even if you can't see it yet. Number 7. Living from the self. The return with purpose. When you make it through the descent and begin rising again, something fundamental shifts inside you. You start living from the self, the deeper, authentic core that was buried under expectations, roles, and fear. And this is where life stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling real. Purpose becomes more than a career choice or a list of goals. It becomes alignment. It becomes the quiet certainty that your actions, your values, and your direction finally match who you are on the inside. You're no longer chasing, meaning you're living it. There's a different kind of presence that emerges here. You stop drifting. You stop sleepwalking through your days. You become awake in a way you haven't felt in years. Decisions become cleaner, sharper, not easier, because truth rarely makes life easy, but cleaner. You know what you need to walk away from, and you stop apologizing for it. You know what matters, and you refuse to betray it. There's no more negotiating with your own soul. Pain still exists, but it changes shape. It's no longer the pain of emptiness or misalignment. It becomes purposeful, a sign of growth, a signal of honesty, and your joy develops roots, the kind that don't vanish the moment life gets difficult. You begin to feel grounded, connected, anchored in something real. You stop surviving and start living, not because life became perfect, but because you became aligned. Living from the self doesn't look glamorous from the outside. It's quieter than people expect. It's calmer. It's more confident. There's no need to prove anything or impress anyone. You stop chasing validation because you finally trust your own direction. You stop fearing solitude because you've reconnected with your own company. You stop pretending because authenticity has become your default, not your goal. And this is where Jung's warning rings louder than ever. The greatest burden in life is to not live the life that is yours. Not the suffering, not the challenges, not the uncertainty, but the weight of betraying your own truth. When you return to the self, that burden finally lifts. You feel lighter, sharper, more present. You feel, for the first time in a long time, alive. And yet, this return isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning of a new one. Because once you reconnect with your purpose, the next question becomes how to build a life that fully honors it. You're not depressed. You've been living disconnected from your soul. Everything you've felt, the exhaustion, the emptiness, the confusion, was never a sign that you're broken. It was a sign that the life you were living no longer matched the man you were meant to become. The pain wasn't the enemy. It was the message. The collapse wasn't the failure. It was the beginning. Every dark moment was your unconscious trying to pull you back to yourself. Your suffering is the invitation. Your emptiness is the doorway. And your purpose is waiting for you to come home. This entire journey through the persona, through the rebellion of the unconscious, through the descent into darkness was leading you here, to the threshold of your own truth. A truth that doesn't need permission, validation, or approval. A truth that's been buried under years of expectations but never died. And now it's asking to be lived. So ask yourself, honestly and without hesitation, what truth inside you have you ignored for too long? Because that truth is your compass. That truth is your path. And the moment you choose it, the moment you commit to it, your life begins to realign itself in ways you never imagined. If this message hits something deep within you, subscribe for more depth psychology insights, content designed to pull you closer to who you were meant to be, not who the world told you to become.